continuing with the mutation, but moving to neoliberalism from below and going back to the Ministry of Human Capital, while indeed there's still a rhetoric of entrepreneurship for all that is there, it seems, and you show it in your recent work, that the subject that is sort of fostered, promoted by the Milei government doesn't resemble the small entrepreneur, self-entrepreneur of the 1990s or even the early 2000s, the one that has survived the progressive era. There's a mutation that has happened there, in the sense that it's less about an entrepreneurial self that wants to make as much income as possible from their work and their initiative, but it's openly so and overtly so, encouraging people to be speculative investors, not so much on their labor, but on their assets, whatever these assets can be, and sometimes they're, and we'll get to that, cryptocurrency. And so it's this very speculative subjectivity more than an entrepreneurial subjectivity. So basically, you don't see yourself as the owner of a personal factory, but you see yourself as the owner of a portfolio with assets that you speculate on, however small these assets are. So that seems to be a mutation in the very nature of what human capital is. But that begs a question, again, going back to that, how do you articulate this sort of encouragement to speculate, which is in the hope that the speculation will be fruitful, with the call for sacrifice, because there's no more money and so we need to be sacrificing. So how does sacrifice and speculation work together? Because if you just need to sacrifice and there's no reward, that doesn't work well with libertarianism. If some need to sacrifice so that other can thrive, that would be the truth of the matter, but that's hard to sell. Or maybe sacrifice is not really a sacrifice, it's just a smart investment. So, which it is.
Yes, and I forget about sacrifice in the previous question. I think that this passage, this transformation from entrepreneur to speculator is very important and very much connected with a new generation also. Because, for example, the speculative subjectivity nowadays inside popular economies are very much protagonized by the younger people. So it is also like a transition between generations, because at the beginning of the popular economy is very much connected with social movements. You have this idea of unemployed people who became entrepreneur with this mixture of social movement experience, but also the capacity of self-management and also the reconfiguration of their subjectivity as workers through the idea of entrepreneurship. And now you have a whole generation that does not have this experience as workers. Maybe they have the experience of entrepreneur of their families and they want to go beyond that. And the idea of go beyond this entrepreneurship, very precarious, it is that of the speculation that is, I think, more abstract or more disconnected even with the idea of worker. So I think that is also a radicalization to go beyond the notion of a worker, that we can say that the entrepreneur maybe still it is attached about with some idea of work. Nowadays, the younger generations, I think, they have this notion of speculation as a new desire of progress without the experience of exploitation. So I think that the subjectivation is in this line, how to avoid the moment of exploitation in a labor market that we already know that is completely precarized and violent. And, well, even the notion of entrepreneurship, it is associated with precarization, and rather the idea of speculative subjectivity, I think that has the imaginary to go beyond exploitation. We can talk about financial exploitation maybe, but I think that the idea that if you are a speculator, you won't be exploited. I think this is one of the main ideas, and very much attractive for younger generations.
So continuing with sacrifice, but on a different level, you show in your recent work that cruelty is really essential to Millet's art of government. And by cruelty, you mean overt, deliberate cruelty that is meant to be understood as such. So it's not the old neoliberal tough love, pull yourself by your own bootstraps, you should be responsible. It's really about aiming at certain groups, certain communities, and having his base enjoy the cruelty that he deploys, right? So there again, connecting that with sacrifice, this art of providing sadistic pleasure is something that Millet and Trump certainly have in common. That's probably why Millet is Trump's favorite president, as he said. But going back to sacrifice, one wonders, is it just about providing sadistic pleasure, or does sacrifice add an element of masochistic pleasure in the sense that we all have to sacrifice for the good of the country or maybe for a better future or something like that? And there, we wonder whether it would be a clash or a difference between Millet and Trump, because Trump, so far at least, is very reluctant to ask for sacrifices. When people talk about a possible recession, say, I don't want to talk about that. So does that mean that there's a difference between the two, that Millet thinks that he can just provide both sadistic and masochistic pleasure, whereas Trump just stick to the sadistic part? Or is it just that Millet is ahead of the curve, meaning that he already knows that sacrifice will be necessary and he prepares the crowd for that, whereas Trump has not gone that far yet?
Actually, I would add a footnote to Michelle's question. Could it be that the difference between cruelty and sacrifice is that sacrifice is for oneself and cruelty is against others? And in fact, what we've seen, for example, in the US with Trump, is that people who've been laid off and who voted for Trump feel betrayed. They think, well, I voted for someone who would lay off other people, not me. So the distinction between sacrifice and cruelty could be there. And the second point, I was wondering really, and to go in the direction of what Michelle was saying, yes, indeed, if the whole point with Trump was to say instant gratification, I'm going to resolve this overnight, whether it be a war or the economic situation or everything. Well, after a short while, you have to say, what about the fact that it doesn't work right away? Well, it takes time, and that's when sacrifice gets in.
Well, maybe the first point is that Millet campaigned with the slogan, "There is no money." So I think that he was not only proposing a sacrifice, he was acknowledging that the population was doing sacrifice. And the index of that sacrifice was this idea, there is no money. So I think that one point that he was very clever during the campaign, but also after, is to recognize this ongoing sacrificial everyday economy during inflation and during this economic crisis that Argentina is completely embedded in. So the way that he very explicitly talk about there is no money as a recognition of sacrifice. I think it is the first point. And the second one is this connection between sacrifice and a future reward that you were also saying before, because I think that he puts the horizon of dollarization as the moment of future reward. So you are sacrificing your economy right now, you are taking debt, you are speculating, but at the end of the day, we will arrive to a dollarized economy. So he's also very clever in that point, because against heterodox economists, he's saying, well, the Argentinian economy is already dollarized in very important segments. And the people have the experience of this dollarization of everyday economics in very crucial elements like housing, certain medicines, and other things that you need to have dollars to be able to buy it. So with this idea of sacrifice and a future promise of reward through dollarization, I think that he's very much connecting with this idea of speculation as a way to go through the sacrificial moment. So I think there is a connection there. And the other thing that I think is very much connected with this idea of cruelty, also thinking about cruelty as a sort of reward. So you can experience the joy of cruelty, but also the sheer spectacularization of cruelty as a sort of reward during this sacrificial moment. So I think that the first important feature of Milei is that he himself is deploying the enjoyment of cruelty in his social media, in his way of speaking, but also in his way of arguing, for example, and the celebration of the lays-off, for example, and the celebration of the criminalization of indigenous communities. So he's offering this collective enjoyment of cruelty as a sort of current reward until we will have the other reward of dollarization. So I think that this is a kind of transaction that he's proposing, and is very effective also in terms that, well, this cruelty has these targeted populations, of course, feminists, queer, public workers, indigenous, nowadays pensionates. And at the same time is not detached of this future promise of stabilization through dollarization. I think that maybe in contrast and comparison with Trump, I think that the Argentinian experience of different financial and economic crises had produced a kind of intimacy with this idea of sacrifice. And I don't know if the American society is so used to be through this kind of financial crisis. In Argentina, is part of this popular subjectivation that we were talking before. So I think that this intimacy with economic crisis also is part of this common language of sacrifice. And at the same time, he's also proposing himself as a sort of rescuer. He will rescue us from inflation, but at the same time, I think it is, well, a transversal code of social relationship nowadays. This combination between cruelty, sacrifice, but also speculation, as we were saying before. And with the global scam that Milei protagonized with the Libra meme coin. I think that he's projecting this idea of speculation, sacrifice in a global landscape, but also demonstrating that you can speculate and you can also be mistaken and there is no problem. And I think that several analysts in Argentina thought that the scam will be, I think, a more important scandal. And I think that in certain level, the idea of scam is so connected with everyday experience in this very speculative everyday economics that is not such scandal in other levels.